Hey everyone, Mike Mulligan here. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am a certified orientation and mobility specialist, and today I'll be demonstrating and talking about the white cane technique, constant contact. Constant contact is a variation of two-point touch and probably one of the most popular white cane techniques out there. So let's get into it. So before I get into my step-by-step demonstration of constant contact, I'd just like to preface this video in saying that this video is really meant to be a review of constant contact. It's not meant to replace meeting with an orientation mobility specialist. And the way I'm going to present constant contact is really the textbook way of doing constant contact, but there's a lot of modifications out there for different needs and abilities. But today I'm just going to be focusing on the textbook way of presenting constant contact. So what is constant contact? Well, constant contact is just a variation of two-point touch. It's done very similar except for one key difference. And that one key difference is with constant contact, the cane tip always remains on the ground. So it's either rolling or sliding left and right. With two-point touch, you lift the cane up, you tap left, lift the cane back up, tap right. But with constant contact, you are just sweeping the cane left and right. But everything else looks pretty much the same as two-point touch. Okay, so we're almost at demonstration time of constant contact, but before I do that, I really want to share with you the pros and cons of using constant contact technique. So first I'd like to start with the pros. So the first pro, which I think most people like, and it's actually backed by research, is that when you are doing constant contact and the cane tip is constantly rolling or sliding on the ground, there's a lot better chance of detecting drop-offs. So drop-offs are either a curb or a step down. So with constant contact, because the cane tip is on the ground, it is able to find those drop-offs a little more consistently and a little bit easier. So for pro number 2 of constant contact, it is that it causes a little less wrist and arm fatigue because there's not the need to lift the cane off the ground and tap from left to right, but now the cane can do a little bit more of the work just rolling or sliding left and right. So for pro number 3 of constant contact is that using constant contact does a better job of giving you terrain input, so telling you what is going on the ground. Because the cane is rolling left and right, it's able to pick up a lot more of that than two-point touch. And this is really helpful, especially for beginners who need a little more of that input to know where they're walking to or what terrain is coming up next. So now for pro number 4, constant contact can be a good way of eliminating some of the noise that two-point touch can create, especially in indoor environments. With two-point touch, with the tapping left and right, that sound can get kind of loud. And if you're trying to be a little more discreet, maybe you're in a library or a hallway of some classrooms, doing constant contact might help to eliminate at least a little bit of that extra sound. Okay, so now we come to pro number 5 of constant contact, which is using constant contact helps eliminate the risk of the cane tip bouncing too high like it can on two-point touch and missing an obstacle that can really become a safety hazard. So for example, a curb. So if you're using two-point touch and you lift your cane too high on accident, there's a chance that it goes over the curb and now that becomes a big tripping hazard. But with constant contact, because the cane tip is constantly on the ground, there's no risk of that happening. So now we come to some of the cons of using constant contact, and probably the biggest one is that the cane will get stuck a little bit more than using two-point touch. And that's because the cane tip is constantly in contact with the ground and there's just more opportunity for it to get stuck in things such as cracks. So one thing that might help with that is if you come in contact with, say, some rough terrain, maybe some cobblestones or some brick sidewalk, you could go to two-point touch for a little bit until you bypass that terrain and then go back to constant contact. So that's one way to kind of eliminate that con. And then one other con that I've heard that I don't notice too much, but is that using constant contact can slow you down a little bit. People tend to go a little bit faster using two-point touch. That doesn't really affect most people, and most people aren't concerned about that, but I just want to share that as a possible con. So those are a few pros and cons of using constant contact. I've probably missed a few, but those are the ones I could think of off the top of my head. And then one last thing I want to mention before I start my demonstration is what cane tip a person uses will affect how well constant contact works. And I've experienced and realized that using a marshmallow roller tip or a rollerball tip, so one of the cane tips that actually rolls on the ground, will be much more beneficial than using either a pencil or a marshmallow tip that don't roll. Because if you use a pencil or a marshmallow tip that don't roll, there's a lot more opportunity to get stuck and it can become quite frustrating using constant contact. Okay, so now it's time for my demonstration. Let's do it. So now I'm going to start my demonstration here of how to do constant contact. And step 1 is to get the cane into index finger grip. So right now I have my cane, it's out in front of me. The cane tip is at 12 o'clock on the ground. I am holding the cane using index finger grip. So my index finger is extended straight out on the handle and pointing down the shaft of the cane. But one thing to note here is you want, when you're doing index finger grip, your hand to be like this, like you're shaking somebody's hand. So my thumb is facing the ceiling, and the back of my right hand, the hand that's holding the cane, is facing to the right. You don't want your hand like this, where your back of your hand is facing the sky and your thumb is facing the ground, or vice versa. You don't want your thumb to be facing right and the back of your hand to be facing the ground. Your hand should really be like this, with your thumb facing the sky and your index finger extended down the grip, and the back of your right hand facing the right, and if you're using your left hand, the back of your left hand facing the left. And now for step 2 is, where are you holding the cane? So when I'm holding the cane, I'm looking for it to be at the center of my body. That way when I sweep the cane left and right, it does a better job of covering my entire body without it drifting to one side or the other. So I have the cane out in front of me, about 12 inches away from the midline or center of my body. Another way to picture this is if you're project a line from your belt buckle straight out 12 inches. Or another way is pretending you're shaking somebody's hand. So my hand is extended out like I'm shaking somebody's hand. And then now step 3, when you start sweeping your cane left and right, you want this motion to come from your wrist. You don't want it to be a full arm motion or from your shoulder, but it's your wrist doing the work. And because I'm holding the cane in index finger grip like this, I can use my index finger as a way of kind of propelling the cane also left and right while I'm sweeping it. Okay, so after you have the cane in index finger grip and extended out in front of you with your hand midline about 12 inches from the body, you can begin to work on sweeping the cane. So when sweeping the cane, the goal is to keep the tip on the ground and let it just roll back and forth. And when you're sweeping left and right, the goal is to get 1 or 2 inches past each shoulder, or 11 or 1 if you're thinking of a clock face, if 12 is straight ahead. So 1 or 2 inches past each shoulder, or 11 and 1. And it's important to make sure you're sweeping wide enough that your whole body is being covered, and not too wide that you're getting caught on all sorts of objects you would have walked right by. And then finally, after you put all those pieces together, you can start moving. And when traveling, it's important to walk in step. So when your left foot is stepping forward, your cane should be on your right side. And when you step forward with your right foot, the cane should be on the left. That way you have full coverage. And I'll cover that more in a specific video about walking in step. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope this video review of constant contact was helpful and you learned a little bit about the pros and cons of this white cane technique. And if you're feeling up for it, please subscribe to my channel here and even click that bell to be alerted when new videos come out. I'd really appreciate it, and have a wonderful day.